Yes, welcome to CS Unlocker. So in this video, we're going to have some discussion on Java thread. So basically, this is how the inter-thread communication work in Java using wait, notify, and notifyAll. And basically, these methods are defined in the Java object class, and we can use these methods for the inter-thread communication between different threads, and few of the nodes are there. So these methods need to be called in the synchronized block, otherwise it will throw some error like illegal monitor state exception, and only one thread can enter at a time to the synchronized block. That is the which is called in operating system like this, the critical section work. Okay, so I mean this critical blocks should be executed at a time by one thread. Okay, so and another point is the thread requires log to enter to that critical section. Okay, so suppose we define one log. Okay, so the thread should acquire this log before it entering to the synchronized block. Okay, so another point is like suppose there are multiple threads working towards same object. Okay, so that time if suppose like we have T1 thread and T2 thread, and T2 thread is doing some critical work on that block. Okay, so that time if this T1 thread want to work on that same block, so definitely the T1 thread should be in waiting for the T2. Okay, once the T2 is completed it work and it is release the log from that object, then definitely T1 can get the log from the same object. Okay, so this is the best concept. And what are the methods in the Java object class? These methods are available like wait, notify, and notifyAll. You can use this method for the inter-thread communication. Okay, so the wait method, what is the purpose of this wait method? When you call the wait method on the object, okay, so basically we create one object and lock on that object. When you call the wait method on that object, it tells the thread that to give up the lock and go to sleep state. Okay, until unless some of the other thread is notifying this the lock. Okay, so till that time it cannot, I mean it is inside that wait. Okay, so another thing is the notify and notifyAll. Okay, so basically when one thread is working some work in the critical section and two threads are waiting, so that time if we call the notify, it cannot wake off the two threads at a time. Okay, because the notify will wake off only one thread. Okay, so if you have requirement like suppose three threads are working parallelly, so one thread is acquired the lock on the critical section part. I mean it is working on the critical section. Two other threads, I mean T2 and T3 is waiting to acquire the lock on the same object. Okay, so that time if it is more than one thread is waiting, so that time how to notify all the threads? So simple, we can use the notify all. Okay, so that it will wake up all the waiting threads. So we have some scenario like we have some problem statement here, how to implement those things. So we have some problem statements like we want to print some number in natural order up to this max number using three threads. Okay, suppose we can take it like thread T1, T2 and T3, and this all this thread like T1 and T2 and T3 want to print the number from 1 to 10 using some sequence. Like first thread will print the number 1, then the second thread will print the number 2, and the third thread T3 is print the number 3. Then again the sequence will repeat like T4 will print the number 1, I mean 4, 6 7 like that. Okay, so how to implement this one? We have like one solution. We can use either remainder section, we can divide this number, and if the remainder is like 0, this is print by assigned to T3, and if its remainder is like 2, then it is assigned to T2, and if the remainder is 1, then it is assigned to T1. Okay, so using this method we are going to achieve this problem statement solution. Okay, so suppose we can have some dry run, like suppose the number is 3. Okay, so if it is 3, the number is 3, then 3% 3, that is the remainder is 0. So now it is print by the T3. Okay, so the T3, once it print that number, then it will increment that number. Okay, so now the fresh value of that number is 4. Okay, so now again this all this thread are checking like what is the remainder of this number. So now if suppose the number is now turned to 4, 4 divide 3, so now the remainder comes 1. So this guy, now the condition is true, so now this guy will print the number, and again it will increment. So the when this guy is printing the number, I mean T3 is printing the number, so definitely that time these two threads are in waiting. Okay, so when it's complete is printing, then it will notify to all the thread, all the waiting thread, that now you can wake up. Okay, so at a time one thread is working to print this number, so same time the other two thread are in waiting state. Okay, so we have some like a practical section or a demo is there, so let me run this program. Yeah, so I have some program, you can see I have some thread classes there. Yeah, if you can see here in the notepad, you can see one, I defined one class like print, and it implement the runnable method, either it extend from the thread class or the runnable method to make this class as thread. Okay, so I defined the max number and the remainder is there. Okay, so based on this if the remainder is 0, then it will be worked by the T3 like that. Okay, so I have initialized this remainder variable using the constructor. Okay, so I assign this one, and after that I create one lock. I use the object class to create one lock, and this lock should be acquired by all the threads. Okay, but at a single point of time one thread should acquire this lock. Okay, so I run because it is implements the runnable method, so that's why I mean it, as it implement the runnable interface, so we need to implement this respective method, that is the run method. Okay, so all the business logic of this thread we need to put inside this run method. Okay, so as per our design, like we need to initialize 3 threads, and each thread, when we are initializing the thread, then we need to pass the what is the remainder of that thread. Okay, so suppose this thread, suppose one thread entered to this block, and first thing is that it need to check whether the number is like less than that max, so that is the max we want to print like up to 10. Then it come to the synchronized block. This is the critical section. Okay, so if you check here up to this, okay, these are called at the critical section block. Okay, so it should be executed inside synchronized block. So now we acquired the lock. Okay, suppose T1 entered, I mean thread T1 entered, so it should get the lock on the object, that is the lock. Then each step it should check, we have like condition is here, like 3 conditions are there. The T3 should check whether the percentage remainder is 0, so in that case it is checked, the remainder is 0. As it's not equal to 0, I mean for the other thread, other two thread like T1 T2, so they come to waiting state. Okay, but for T3, okay, the remainder is 0, so that's why it is come to this part. Okay, because we put the condition not equal to. Okay, so for suppose T3, so we can take this example like suppose now the value of number is like 3. Okay, so now number is 3, so it is makes easy for you to, I mean, for the dry run. So suppose the number is 3. Okay, so the number is 3% is 3 equal to 0. So now the remainder are like we have 3 threads are there. One thread having t like the remainder is 0, another is remainder 1, another is remainder 2. Okay, so now in this case t, which thread have the remainder 0, this t3 thread have the remainder 0. Okay, so now T3 like it will compare like since the remainder is 0, so it should not come to this block. Okay, that is, it is called the waiting. Okay, so now it is come out from here and it should directly execute this block. Okay, then like current thread that this one, and it will work like it should print that number, and then once it print that number it should like increment that number. Okay, once it is completed to print and increment, then since the same time when T3 is execute this one, because the condition is getting true for him. Okay, so the same time T1 and T2, they are put in the wait block. Okay, that is, they are waiting for this lock. Okay, so so how these two thread like T2 and T3, I mean it's not T3. Okay, so this one now suppose the number is 3. Okay, so now T3 is printing all this thing. Okay, so at the same time T1 and T2, they are in waiting. Okay, so how these two threads are wake up, that is T1 and T2. So definitely the T3 is invoke the notify all, because there is more than one thread are waiting. Okay, so once T3 is invoke the notify all, the same time it will basically help to wake up those waiting thread. Okay, like in this case T1 is wake up and T2 also wake up. Okay, once it is wake up, then again it will check inside this while loop. Okay, it should not come out. Okay, until the condition is true. Okay, so if the condition is true, again they are come to here. Okay, like that. So we have some program, let me run this program. Okay, this is the thread class, and how to call this thread class. I have the thread main class is there, and in the thread main class, for the thread, suppose the print class is a thread class because it is implements the runnable. So we can have 3 different object and pass the constructor like what the purpose of this thread. Okay, so for the remainder 0, this thread will work. For the remainder 2, this thread will work, like that. Okay, so let me create the thread object, so I can pass this object here and name it is like thread1, thread2, thread3. Okay, so we can start these 3 threads, T1 start, T2 start, and T3 start. Okay, so now at a time I start all these threads. So how they are executed we can see here. Okay, so I have all this file like print.java and print.main.java. So how to compile this file? Simple, you can use javac start.java. So hopefully 2 classes should be there. One is print class is there, another is print main class is there. Okay, so now we can invoke this main method class, that is print main. So we can use this java print main. So I put some delay there like sleep. Okay, so that it is helpful to visualize Okay, so I put this. Now you can see T1 fast printing 1, T2 2, and T3 3. Then the sequence again repeat, like again T1 4 5 6. Yeah, they will print up to 10. Now the execution is completed. Okay, so they maintain the sequence T1 T2 T3, then again T1 T2 T3. Okay, in that way then I mean they have like inter-thread communication. T1, when the T1 is printing, then definitely T2 and T3 is in waiting state that time, and when the T1 is completed it work, it will increment that number and notify all the waiting thread. Okay, so we can see those things. If I add some uh, print, let me add some print message so that it is easy to visualize. Now you can see if I rerun that program, you can see how the threads are waiting. When one thread is working, that time other two threads are in waiting. Now you can see T1 started printing 1, T2 started 2, and when T2 is printing 2, the same time T1 and T3 are waiting. Okay, then similarly when T3 is printing 3, T1 is in waiting, and when T1 is printing, so that time this guys is in waiting. Similarly this thing. Okay, so if you want to see more details, you can add some. Yeah, so you can add few lines here so that let me recompile this one. Yeah, so when you if you check this message, when the T2 is completed is printing. Okay, so suppose we can take from here. Okay, suppose T3 is the completed is printing uh, this line, this line. Okay, then it will increment this number. You can see here it is increment the number and notify all this thread. Okay, so when T3 is printing this thing, and that time itself it increment that number. Okay, so that what happens, the number is incremented to 4. Okay, so again the same time, now the T1 and T2 is in waiting, they are in this block. Okay, they are is in wait. Okay, so that time you can see T2 is in waiting, also T1 is also in waiting. Okay, but they are inside when the number is changed to 4, because T3 when printing this thing 3 and it increment to number 4. So same time these two guys T2 and T1 they are checking. Okay, so since T3 already invoked the notify all, so that's these two guys are wake up and they are keep on checking, like inside the while loop. Here you can see in the while loop they are checking whether the reminder is like their reminder or not. Okay, because each thread have the reminder variable set inside this constructor, so they need to check. Okay, so if the condition is I mean true, then definitely they will execute this print, otherwise they'll come to this wait state again. Okay, so like in this case, when this 4 number is changed to 4, then t1 condition becomes true, because 4 percentage 3, that the remainder is 1. So t1, now compare this thing, t1 is comparing this one. Okay, so the condition is 1 not equal to remainder 1. So now it is coming to this block. Okay, so same time other two thread come to wait state. Okay, so this way we can achieve the inter-thread communication, and using the wait, notify and notify all using Java thread. Thank you.